how to build skills that actually work. I feel that I've been doing many videos about AI skills and evals, but in this video I'm going to share with you kind of a new strategy that I've been using that really improves the whole reliability and output quality of the skills. Um, if you've been building agents, you know that most people write a prompt and hope for the best. If you've been building skills, you're obviously ahead of the pack, but Anthropic recently published a new skill builder that actually has built-in evals, and I took this built-in evals process, added it to my open code, which is what I'm using. I'm not using Cloud Code very often. I'm mostly using open code, which is quite similar. But the main idea is it's a self-improving skill. And what I want to share with you in this video is how I'm doing this and the result that is yielding. And then I will show you a use case in which we are using Bright data to scrape pricing pages of competitors, of SaaS companies. And since we want to formalize the data that is being scraped by Bright data from these pricing pages, we want to use a skill that basically unifies the structure of the data. So if you've been building with AI, you know that skills are basically a reusable set of instructions. They contain the markdown file, which has the instructions, the workflow, the rules. They can contain other nested skills inside of them. They can contain an output schema, like requirements of evidence, how to handle edge cases, anti-hallucination rules, references, scripts that make it more deterministic, actually executing code. And skills obviously beat one-shot prompts, besides the fact that they are very convenient, as they are consistent, so same schema every time across any input. They are testable, you can measure if the skill works or not. They are improvable, because if something is testable, it is also improvable, so failure becomes actionable feedback. Reusable, composable, and shareable, so they can just be shared, sent to teammates, can be downloaded for GitHub, etc. Now, a prompt basically is a wish, a skill is more of a system. This is how I think about this. All of us know the famous quote by Peter Drucker, what gets measured gets improved, or what gets measured gets managed. So basically you cannot improve what you can't measure. And very often people judge AI output by eyeballing it, this doesn't look right, or stuff like this. But eyeballing doesn't scale, it misses subtle errors, and it can tell you if version 2 is actually better than 1. And this is relevant also for objective measures and also for subjective measures. So we all know the vibe-based evaluation. This looks good to me, which is not so valuable. It's somewhat valuable, but it's not really as valuable as Eval-based evaluation. I discussed Evals very often in other videos of mine. An Eval can be using an LLM-as-a-Judge, which basically you define an LLM to evaluate the output, or it can be a human being that does the eval. But regardless of who is going to do the eval, whether it's going to be the human being or the LLM-as-a-Judge, what you need real test data. You need a clear success criteria, assertions. You need a baseline comparison. And you probably need automated grading if you want to scale. And basically the loop is testing, fixing, retesting. Now, what I built here, and as I told you, it is inspired by Anthropic's skill builder version 2. Let's open it up. Anthropic skill builder version 2, self-optimizing. Let's see. Yes, it's here. They have a blog post about this. I think it's over here. It is worth reading if you guys are interested in understanding more about this. I think they also have a blog post about this. Anyway, I will go over the gist over here. By the way, for text to speech or speech to text, since I switched to Linux and I don't have the Windows native capability, I found this excellent free tool, which is called Handy. It's valuable. It's kind of a, instead of using Whisperflow, for those of you who are probably, many of you who are already using Whisperflow, the thing about the Whisperflow is that it's not compatible with Linux. So I found this alternative. It's open source, it's free, and it's very valuable. It is called Handy. It is using a local model by NVIDIA, Parakit, or something like this. It's crazy how accurate it is and so fast. So I highly recommend checking this out if you're not using voice dictation yet. Now back to the video. So as we said, it's an evolutionary loop. You write a skill, you eval it, you branch into variants, and then you tournament them against each other. And this is like the new addition. So the steps are, and I will elaborate in a moment. So the first step is getting the real data. So we scrape real world data using the Bright Data MCP, which I highly encouraging checking it out. Bright Data MCP. You can just come here and you get a ton of credits when you just get started. Then you very easily set it up in Cloud Code or Open Code or whatever. Then you write the skill version 1. Then you define the evaluation. So what would you like to test? In this case, since we are scraping pricing pages, we want to make sure that all the pricing options are available, that we are not confusing between annual pricing and monthly pricing, etc., etc. Then we run the baseline versus the skill. So basically, we take the evals, we take the output, and we score the output based on the evaluations. What we always do, we are comparing what the skill yielded with what the no skill, I mean just the prompt yielded. And then the cool thing that I've added is more iterations. So this is like a diagram that shows this. So first of all, we have version 1. We analyze the failures and strengths, and then we generate version 2. And version 2 comprises of 5 to 10 variations, each variation is with a different strategy. So V2A, the actual skill, has stricter evidence rule. V2B is a different variation, has better add-ons detection. V2C has a simplified schema in the outputs of the skill. V2D has a usage-based pricing focus, so just the skill is more heavily focused on, like the prompt in the skill is more heavily focused on this. And the V2E, which is the 5th variation of the second iteration, is mostly guiding the LLM to look for aggressively look for gotchas or stuff that went wrong. Then we run the evals again on all these variations of the second iteration, and we kind of take what has worked well in each one of them, and based on this we decide, okay, V2C produced the best results, so V2C is going to become the base, it's going to become the main. But if anything interesting, if the evals recognize anything interested in other variations, we are also going to consider adding it to the skill, to the third variation. Basically, take the best traits from winners. So generation 3, breed a new permutation from the best parts. So skill, the third version of the skill is V2C's simplified schema plus V2A's evidence rules plus V2E's gotchas mining. So basically this is more of an evolutionary optimization. It doesn't comprise of so much guesswork. Obviously we do have somewhat of guesswork because each variation is slightly different and we don't know what would yield better results. But the optimization process is based on numbers, it's based on evals. Obviously, if the evals are subjective, let's say we are writing copy, so it is subjective, so it's not just not as objective as something that is really measurable. But it still is very valuable, depending obviously on the skill and what you're trying to accomplish. I do believe that this process is valuable also for generating landing pages. For example, landing page design. I did this thing with generating like 10 different HTMLs, each one with different focus. And then I went over all the HTMLs. They were all for the same landing page. I saw what I liked. I made that the main, the base, and then I made more iterations on the main. So it's valuable regardless of whether it's objective or subjective skill. Now it's very important that you have like a ground truth and that you test this on data that isn't contaminated. And in this case, as I'm going to show you in a moment, we just made sure to scrape everything with Playwright data, and then we compared everything with the Playwright MCP. We actually took screenshots and compared everything. So let's discuss the live demo, not exactly the demo, but the test case. So to demonstrate this pipeline, I built a skill that extracts and normalizes SaaS pricing data. So I scraped 8 real pricing pages with Playwright data MCP and ran the full eval cycle. So we took Lemlist, Clay, Make, Apify Instantly, Bardeen, Browse AI, Octoparse, etc. Then what we did, we scraped everything and then we cross-checked it with a visual screenshot. So we went, for example, we went to the Clay landing page, we scraped it with Bright Data. As I told you, I chose Bright Data because the MCP is very convenient and is the most reliable scraper at the moment. It has the best infrastructure, especially if you want to scale, if you want to use many proxies or many proxies. If you want it consistent, if you want it reliable, I highly recommend checking out Bright Data. And then we took the scrape content and we compared it to the visual screenshot with Playwright. This gives us verified reference data for each page. We know exactly how many plans exist, what prices are shown, and what's hidden below the fold. Now we can grade the skills output against what's actually there. So I scraped the page. I know what the page actually has because I verified with the screenshot. And now I'm going to test the output and see if it is accurate. We ran a few checks so to see if there is the correct plan count. So basically we verified against plan cards visible in screenshot, correct plan names, no hallucination pricing, enterprise. We checked if the enterprise equals contract sales. We checked if the evidence are provided. So for every in the skill, we actually required the skill to output the source quotes. So they are traceable. So let's say Bright Data scrape like, let's say, a pricing plan from Clay. Afterwards, the LLM needs to analyze this and actually show us the hyperlink to the actual HTML and a few more checks. Basically, this process, although it was pretty simple, we didn't need to do a lot of iterations. We realized that we went from 52% just with a simple prompt, no skill, just a prompt. And with skills, we were able to take this to 100%, actually reducing the mistakes in terms of the plan count, the mistakes in terms of plan names. We got no hallucination pricing. We got all the evidence were provided. All the add-ons in all the plans were captured, and we found we had no gotchas mistakes, no mistakes. Here's like an example of the output difference. We have just the baseline scraped from Clay, and then with the skill, you can see it becomes way more structured and unified, and this allowed us, will allow me in the future, if I want to scrape more pricing pages, I can be confident that with the skill, this is going to be pretty accurate. Obviously, every now and then I'm going to analyze this, and it depends on how important the data is for me, but still, you can see over here that with the skill, we already got a significant improvement on how this looks like. Now, another thing that is important to discuss is failure analysis. So once you encounter failure, you need to understand what are the patterns. So for example, we saw that there were no evidence of citations. So what is the real impact? So no way to verify if any price is real. So we just ask the skill or add to the skill the fact that every claim must include source text. Another failure pattern that emerged is annual price shown as monthly. So the user might think that they will pay less. Obviously, the skill, the sourced or the extracted data is incorrect because we don't make a distinction between the annual price and the monthly. So the skill addresses this by showing separate price monthly and separated price annual. They're basically two different fields, and this increased the reliability of the extraction. So let me go over the full process just to emphasize or reiterate how I built this skill. So first of all, as I said, it's very important to move away from prompts to skills. This is like the first phase. The second phase is adding evals, and the third phase is adding evals that self-optimize the skill and building many variations, many permutations, and extracting the best element from each permutation. So this is the process that I'm offering to you guys to start implementing. And in this short demonstration or video, we basically scraped different pricing pages. We cross-checked them with Playwright screenshots just to make sure that we have like a ground truth. Based on this, we wrote the skill, we wrote the evals, binary assertions to assess whether or not the skill yielded good results. Then we compared the skill results versus the baseline to see the lift of what was the improvement that was achieved by the skill. And then we graded everything, and we can basically from there on, we can just start to optimize more and more and more. In this specific instance, we didn't need to because the skill is pretty straightforward, and even after one iteration, we already got everything right. But for example, as I told you, I have like a skill for writing posts in LinkedIn in which I did like 7 or 8 iterations until I felt that I got it right. And still, whenever I have a new idea, I'm going to add the new idea to the skill, and I run this new skill against the evals to see if it actually improved objectively, or not objectively, subjectively improved the results. So it's very important to use these evals because they create benchmarks for your skills. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today, guys. I kind of feel that the video was slightly all over the show. We discussed a few things. First of all, just the importance of the skill, then adding evals, then evals that are self-selecting. Then we discussed using the Playwright MCP with the Bright Data MCP. They both have different purposes, but they are both like the MCPs that I use the most, and in many cases it's very they are complementary, and it makes a lot of sense to use Playwright Bright Data for scale and Playwright just for probing and making sure that the numbers are accurate and that we are actually scraping what we wanted. That's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please make sure to subscribe, leave a comment below with your feedback or any ideas how to optimize your skills. And until next time, keep on automating.